Gotta get some orange in here. Come up here. Veterans? Great. Just great. I actually going to have some orange come up here. Yeah.
They wanted to start back except for
Move it a little bit out.
I want these guys in the picture. Let's get the students in the picture. Come on up, guys.
You want to step back? Sure.
Good. Hi there. My name is State Senator Jason Isaacson, and I am joined today by some of the most wonderful people I know who are engaged in a very important topic. And, you know, we represent diverse backgrounds here in Minnesota, and as state senators, we're working together on a platform to kind of offer a comprehensive plan to bring around gun safety. And so before we get into that plan, I want to have a few Minnesotans that get a chance to say a word, and I'm going to bring up Adrian, a student who spoke yesterday here in St. Paul at the Minnesota rally, March for Our Lives. Adrian? There we go.
Thank you. My name's Adrian Alikakamo, and I'm a junior at St. Paul Central High School. I was born 2 years after the Columbine shooting. I've grown up in the generation of Americans for which mass shootings have been a normalcy. It should not be normal news for me to hear reports of students being slaughtered, and yet we as a nation have continued to routinely permit these acts of violence. We must address the gun violence in our schools, but also acknowledge the suicide deaths and address the fact that communities of color suffer disproportionately from this violence. It is well past time for us to make a change, and we youth will no longer tolerate inaction. I've been one of many youth leaders in this fight for gun legislation. I met with legislators, organized students, protested, and on Saturday, I spoke at the Minnesota March for Our Lives. The bills being introduced today are the types of solutions we have been asking for. But until they are passed into law, we will not rest. We students have led this fight, and we have momentum. We will be the generation that forces a solution. We are working to elevate all voices. We will continue to protest, and come November, we will vote. Thank you to the DFL party for hearing us, introducing this legislation, and giving me a platform to speak. I truly believe that together we can make Minnesota safer for us all.
Thank you. It's nice. If you hear the snapping in the background, we have some folks that are fresh off the bus from D.C. participating in the march here, representing Minnesota, and really appreciate you guys being here. Thank you very much. Next, we have a teacher, and I didn't catch the name before we walked in, but where are we at here? Right, here we go. Come on in. Yeah, you're up. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kelly Neff. I am a school social worker at the White Bear Lake Area School District. I've worked there for 20 years now. I'm currently working with students who receive special ed services. I'm here to commend these common sense gun control measures that make our schools, students, and school staff safe. I want to talk about the word access. 1, youth have too easy access to guns. 2, our buildings and classrooms are too accessible for violence to occur. 3, students have too little access to adequate mental health services. I see this every day. Students who need access to mental health services but cannot gain access to it. Democrats and Republicans know this. These are not partisan issues. Along with these common sense gun control measures like background checks, moving the age to 21 for military-style weapons, and restrictions on bump stocks, the Minnesota legislature and Governor Dayton must give our schools funding for school social workers, school psychologists, school counselors, school nurses, and chemical health specialists. We must make schools safe by making buildings secure. We must also address easy access to guns. Safe schools are also created by being trauma-informed and trauma-sensitive, providing a scope of prevention programming in all grades, possess adequate multidisciplinary student support services, such as the school social workers, school counselors, school psychologists, school nurses and chemical health specialists, and school-linked mental health services. We must have safe schools. Keeping our children safe is a basic instinct as a parent. Keeping our children safe from gun violence should be a fundamental goal of our state and nation. I wish the Republican legislator would be willing to hear all bills that have potential to keep our kids safe. Inaction to these important issues is not an option. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I really appreciate people being here today to cover this, and I appreciate the students that shown up and the folks that were willing to speak. You know, Minnesota families deserve a civil, respectful, and safe conversation about what we can do to prevent gun violence. Today, as senators, we're really standing on the students' shoulders as they are helping drive the issue, and I want to follow them where they go because I think that our student leaders are empowered and they want to let their voice be known, and I think it's important that we respect that. And so I want to reflect my respect for the work that they're doing so far to help us keep this issue relevant and that we're able to really enact some meaningful reforms that will bring about more safety to our schools and our population in general. We have several folks here that are, a couple folks here with me that are going to talk about the bills we're proposing. And what we have here really is an effort by several senators and people that want to be engaged and allies to enact a plan that goes beyond just one bill or two bills, but really talks about how can we create safer schools and a safer environment with the kind of legislation and maybe even some cultural change that leads us down that path and for further discussions. And so the area that I'm talking about today is school safety, and we have two bills that we're looking at. One authored by me, which is a safe schools levy to create a one safe access point in our schools to provide regulated controlled entrance so that we can regulate better who's getting in and out of our schools and what they're getting out of our schools with. And so we can do that through bond money on the Safe Schools levy, and that's kind of the focus we're taking with that. And the second one is by Senator Bigham, and this has to do with creating a threat assessment team that's looking at experts in counseling and mental health and K-12 instruction, administration, law enforcement to get protocols for handling potential threats. Please know that my bills aren't going to all of a sudden make schools safer, but it's a first step in a long line of bills and work we hope to do, and preferably changes that occur within our community to create some safety. And so while this group is just starting today, I know that all of us are committed to being here until it ends. We're not just a one-and-done situation. We want people to know there is a commitment among Senate Democrats to find solutions that reach to all Minnesotans that we can all agree on to prevent gun violence, especially as it relates to our schools. Next, I'd like to introduce Senator Klein.
Thank you.
Here you go.
Well, thank you. I'm Senator Matt Klein, and I represent Mendota Heights. I, first of all, just want to take a minute and let you know about the large profile of people that are up here. Of course, we have several DFL senators, and I thank them for being here. We have representatives from the veterans community, Veterans for Peace. We have law enforcement officers here, teachers, doctors, medical students, and high school students, all fairly passionate about this issue, all with a voice to bring. I come here, as you may know, from the March on Washington, where I joined these brave young people with orange hoodies to protest against or to speak out about gun violence in our country and in our state. You know, there was something pretty transformative about being in that crowd of hundreds of thousands of young people, and the chant that kept emerging spontaneously between speakers was "Vote them out, vote them out." I have never heard this chant from hundreds of young people from every precinct in this nation before in my lifetime. And to be clear, I don't think that crowd distinguished between Republicans and Democrats. I think they meant all elected officials who have failed to enact meaningful solutions to gun violence or adequately protect our schools over the last 20 years. It means Republicans who will not hold hearings on a number of ideas, and it also means Democrats like me who have failed to lead on this issue. They hold us all responsible, and I understand that this is an issue with strong believers on both sides, but if we can't discuss this acute and excruciating tragedy in the committee rooms of the state legislature, then why do they bother to send us here? The young people marching across this country are asking that question. They feel they can do better, and in many cases, they're right. You likely know that I'm a physician. I work at Hennepin County Medical Center, where I have a daily familiarity with gun violence. I've authored Senate File 2726, the Gun Violence Prevention Act, with Representative Aaron Murphy in the House, and I want to thank Senators Latz, Swadzinski, Zizik, and Little, who have co-authored it with me in the Senate. The bill removes the prohibition at the Department of Health against gathering data on gun ownership as it relates to public health. The bill is before the Health and Human Services Committee, where the most urgent issues affecting the health of our state sit, and it has not received a hearing. We must have the courage to address gun violence as the public health threat that it is. An apt comparison is traffic deaths, which 70 years ago in this country, traffic deaths were at an extraordinarily high level per mile driven. Through a series of targeted intelligent strategies, car redesign, traffic flow modifications, seatbelt use, we have brought that down to a fraction of its previous level. There is every reason to believe that a similar approach to gun violence can save lives, but we have to have the courage to discuss it, and we have to have the power to study it. Thank you.
Senator DeVille, talk about gun safety.
Right.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone, for being here, and I want to echo my gratitude for the young people. You don't look that sleepy, but there's a lot of coffee over in the green room, so help yourself. So inspired. History is being written. The conversation is being changed in a very profound way for your leadership and your engagement, and the young people up with us as well. Thank you. I've learned that the things that unite us as Minnesotans are so much stronger and more important than those things that divide us. We learned that just a few years ago in these constitutional amendment debate and vote that we had. We all want the best for our children, for our families, for our community. If we work hard, play by the rules, show love for one another, things should be all right for the most part. So the question is, why are we awash in so much violence? Almost no one doesn't know someone who hasn't been affected by gun violence. No one wants to fear for their safety from guns. We all agree up here, guns are not the issue. No one here is anti-gun. We're all pro-gun safety. I was raised in a gun-owning home. I grew up hunting. I grew up target practicing. I'm a pretty good shot, by the way. So is my dad. He's excellent. Guns just simply shouldn't be in the hands of people in danger of harming themselves or others. It really is that simple. It's clear that the rules we have just aren't adequate, despite the good efforts to enforce the few laws that we do have. Simple measures, better background checks, no one slipping through the cracks. Of course, practical measures to keep our schools more safe through physical improvements and better safety protocols and the like. But as Kelly Neff said, more social workers, counselors, chemical dependency workers, psychologists, school nurses to take care of the psychosocial needs of our young people. Making sure we can minimize the proliferation of guns that may be fine in war but have no place in our civil society, are not even allowed to be used for hunting. Keeping guns and ammunition safe and secure in our homes. Responding to trauma so cycles of violence aren't repeated. Having decent data in hand so we know what policy interventions work and which ones don't. As one adult said, I heard on the radio this morning about Saturday's marches. These young people have snapped us out of whatever fog and confusion we've been in after all of these tragedies and so much inaction. The fact is that almost every single day, 100 people are killed by gun violence. 7 of them are children. Another 200 are injured. 62% of those deaths are by suicide. We have almost 4 gun deaths per 100,000 people in our country. Every single other developed country has an extremely tiny fraction of that. All of those countries have very similar rights and freedoms, just better safety policies, and they are shown to be effective. So I had the incredible honor last Thursday of sending off 70 young people as they were getting on their buses to go to Washington, and I can't tell you how inspiring and motivating and moving their sincerity, their clarity, and their focus was. I told them, go and march, go rally, change the conversation, but come back to Minnesota and engage with us, put pressure on us, hold us to account, make sure that the elections turn out the way we want, run for office yourself. As Senator Klein said, it is time for us to lead. That is our job, and that is rightly what is being demanded of us.
Thank you very much. Well, I think we've kind of summed up, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, and maybe we can answer some questions. Feel free to ask any if you have any around here for any of us.
Where's your majority leader?
I would assume in his office.
But not supporting this?
Oh, no, he had an op-ed this last week in Duluth.
You're a minority leader.
Minorities, yes. Minority leader.
Just listening.
It's almost like you're clairvoyant, right? You want to? Go ahead. You're in leader.
I'm Susan Kent, Assistant DFL Leader, and Senator Bach had a personal matter that came up suddenly, and he had to leave.
Okay, but he is in support
Yes,
of this and all of you. Is he a co-author?
I don't know if he's co-author on any of these
He's
particular
on a couple
bills,
of bills.
but
Or
we
just
should,
one,
yeah.
we should make sure that everybody reads what he wrote in the Duluth paper
Yeah.
this weekend.
And back to the majority, the current majority in the Senate, do you have any Republican authors?
No, we do not. Well, actually, two bills do have,
The little bills.
the little bill and Carla Bigham's threat assessment bill
But in
does.
this package?
Yeah, they're part of the bills that are part of the
that is part of
package,
this
right.
package.
I don't know, to be fair, that they signed on knowing they're going to be part of a larger package, so if you talk to them, let them know that. But I mean, they agreed to the bills in principle. We intentionally went with separate bills because we thought each one deserved its own merit and discussion. Sometimes when we clump them together, they get lost with one issue that becomes a hot button, and so we're trying to create a breadth of bills.
So in addition to the details of all of these bills, which are out there right now, it sounds like what you're trying to convey is that you're not getting a hearing. Is that fair? Is that
That is
accurate?
very fair,
Is that
yeah.
why you're here today?
That's part of why we're here. I mean, you know, immediately we have students here that aren't just out there wasting their time. They want to see some change right now. But, you know, Larry Jacobs said this morning about talking on NPR about how we see these movements come and they get high and then they kind of drop off and there's this chilling effect. And what we want to do is convey that we're not going to allow that to happen, and we're going to keep that message on the forefront. And so if we don't get hearings this time, we're going to continue to organize, continue to rally, and push for hearings next time until we can get this conversation moved.
And at this point, you are very likely not to get a hearing because you're past the deadline?
I'm not sure that that's necessarily true, but I think that would be probably the odds bet. But I know there are some people working on both sides of the aisle to try to push at least one bill through. And go ahead, if you want to come.
I can give a bit of an update.
Would you please? Thank you.
Yeah, I would only say to that, the deadlines are set by the majority party and can be modified by the majority party. If we have an issue that's urgent enough before the people of Minnesota and they want to hear about it, I can't see why an artificial deadline would impede that.
Let's let Senator Lance maybe speak to that.
I'm Senator Ron Latz. I'm the lead Democrat on the Judiciary Committee, and just about every meeting last week I asked Senator Limmer, the chair of our committee, when we were going to get a hearing on our bills. On Friday, at the conclusion of the hearing, he indicated that we may, using his words, we may have an informational hearing on these bills to get a, quote, better airing of these issues. So there are a number of bills pending right now before the Judiciary Committee. The criminal background check, which I'm the author of, and which also Senator Littles and Kent and a couple of Republican authors have the identical bill before the Judiciary Committee. The age 21 to purchase assault weapons and the extreme risk order bills. As you can hear, there's some other committees that have other bills as well. So I would encourage you, members of the press, to go ask the chairs, when are we going to have these hearings? I think we need more than an informational hearing. We need action this year, and there is time, as Senator Klein indicated. The medical cannabis bill a couple of years ago was passed after all the deadlines had passed. When there's consensus and the will to make something happen, there's a procedural basis to make it happen as well.
How about the school safety bills? How different are those than what are Republicans pushing through?
I think that what we're trying to accomplish here is I don't know of anybody who's pushing a one safe entrance point, and that would require a change in how we do the levy for safe school bonding. And the threat assessment bill is a bipartisan bill. So that one has got both senators from either side of the aisle on that. And so there is so much more that we haven't included yet that we can talk about with school counselors is the other thing. We just, you know, if we're preventing this before it happens, it's much stronger, and that's the focus I'm hoping we can move forward with. So the ones that we're focused on right now are just a threat assessment, which is bipartisan, and then the one safe entrance point.
Is school safety enough? That's clearly been the focus from Republicans in both majorities, say they're going to do school safety. Is that enough?
I don't know. No, I don't think that they're willing. They're willing to have kind of conversations, but not willing to be upfront about that. And I don't think that they've shown any willingness to have a serious conversation about this moving forward. They've blocked any hearings. Gazelka's been clear that any bills that talk about being remotely close to guns are not going to get heard. And so I don't feel like that's going to be enough, and we're going to continue to work forward on it.
It's important to make note of the fact that there are a few Republicans in this building or on this campus who have indicated willingness to take a look at better background checks, keeping guns out of the hands of people who might pose a threat to themselves or others, the so-called red flag bills. And so we sense an opening, a bipartisan opening. And we're really not here to beat the drum and to be super partisan. We are actually really trying to put out a message of unity, of bringing ourselves together, not necessarily with our Republican colleagues, but uniting all Minnesotans. I mean, I'm telling you, these young people, I think Senator Klein said it best, the pressure they're putting on the system isn't Democrats and Republicans. They're looking at all of us together. And so the movement being built, I mean, that was the same thing for medical cannabis. They didn't care who was Republican and who was a DFLer. They were expecting something to happen on a policy that united us, that they cared about across the board. So we're actually trying to invite Republicans into this conversation because these are all very common sense issues that if you poll, but you can also just sense the movement around them, they unite people across all kinds of geographic, demographic, and partisan differences.
Can I speak?
Yeah.
I just want to quickly answer Ms. Lahammer's question about is school safety enough. Some of the most compelling stories from Washington were from the forgotten people who live in, say, Los Angeles or elsewhere in America who have lost siblings to gun violence at a young age. At Hennepin County Medical Center, I see, there are 30,000 deaths from gun violence in America every day. A very tiny fraction of those are the high-profile tragedies that we see in Parkland and Las Vegas. But there are thousands of forgotten victims of gun violence that don't make the papers. And so school safety is important. It is certainly not a broad-based solution and not a particularly comprehensive one.
Senator, what kind of injuries are you seeing and what kind are you treating right here in Minnesota, right here in the Twin Cities?
You see, I'm not sure how to answer the question, but at
know what it looks like so that people will know.
At Hennepin County Medical Center, there is a great deal of gun violence. Not being a surgeon, I don't care for it directly. I see it as it comes in, and I wouldn't be comfortable sort of describing my patient's injuries, I guess.
We got time for 2 more questions.
Can I hear from one of the high schoolers?
That's right.
We want real people.
Yeah.
What's the school safety plan that's currently in place at your school? Do you feel safe with that, and how would this change what's happening right now?
Well, I know our school and many schools have SROs and IDs that you're required to get in. Ultimately, though, I don't think any school safety plan right now is really up to the task of stopping somebody with an AR-15. I know students as young as 6 that are nervous about going to school because of what they've heard. And I think that's outrageous. And frankly, it's just this country where that happens, too, right? Mm-hmm. There are students as young as 6 who are worried about getting shot in their school right now. And it's only happening here. And to me, that is an absolute failure of the people who have been in power until now to allow that to continue. Because there are places in this world and even in this country that have better laws and have ways to prevent that. And I will know that my first grade friends and people that I talk to that are younger than me and kids in my own grade don't have to go to school worrying about not getting home.
What's your reaction to hearing all of this today where there are bills that are ready to go to have hearings, but there are no hearings? What do you think about that?
I would say that's shameful. the part of the democratic process that is so important is that the people we elect come together to discuss the matters that we care about, right? And if they're not getting discussed, then the democratic duty of the people we elected is not being done, right? I think this is, I don't think a Republican or a gun owner feels any less pain when someone they lose or someone they love gets lost to gun violence. And I think if you look at polls, as Senator, I believe, Klein mentioned earlier, this is something that goes across party lines. People want these types of bills across Minnesota and across party lines and across gun ownership or not gun ownership. And it's time for us to listen to the majority of people and stop being worried about small minority lobby groups and focus on what's going to make us safer.
What do you intend to do to keep up the momentum that has started with walkouts and the march that took place on Saturday?
Well, I know students, including Adrian and I, are actually working together with students from across the state to organize. I just talked to someone yesterday who said they want to send a group of students to the Capitol every day until something happens. I plan on working with lobby groups like Moms Demand Action and Students Demand Action, which is the student offshoot of that organization, to maintain pressure. And then in the midterms, right? Midterms are coming up. I expect you'll see us out on the streets. I expect you'll hear us making phone calls because we demand a change now. And if we do not get a change now, if we don't get a change this session, then hundreds of people are going to die before the next session that we could have prevented.
Can you just tell us your name and your school?
My name is Ben Yeager, spelled Benjaeger, and I am a junior at Roosevelt High School.
Got time for one more question.
I would also like to echo that the majority is not unaware that this is what we want right now. I've been organizing students. I know tons of students who have been organizing all over the state. We have been contacting Majority Leader Gazelka. We have been contacting Limmer. We have been asking for this hearing. They're not oblivious to the fact that this is what we want. They are actively choosing to turn a blind eye, to plug their ears. And in a sense, I would also issue a warning that November is coming. And on Saturday, I spoke to 20,000 people at the March for Our Lives, and that's just a small fraction of the people that care about this. And we as students are mobilized to see change on this. So if they aren't going to present it, we will be voting in November.
Your name again?
Oh, my name's Adrian Alikakamo. That's Adrian. And then my last name, Ali-CACCAMO.
And a year in school?
Oh, junior, sorry.
What school again?
Central High School in St. Paul.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys. All right.